and welcome to Rewind Reviews, the podcast where we watch movies that we remember from our youth, sometimes to find out if they hold up. Sometimes it's just because we really fancy watching them again after a little while, because they're a classic and they're probably going to hold up, but you're looking forward to seeing them again because it's been a few years or whatever. Sometimes, Chris, we watch a film because the idea that particular film is like some sort of classic, but you don't really remember too many details, and you think, I wonder why that is. It's maybe a film, Chris, that made a lot of money and was a very big film at the time. Like most people at the time saw it. Like the movie-going audience unanimously chose to come and see this film, and you think it's weird that a movie that had that sort of success hasn't really stuck in my brain. And then you sit down and watch it and discover, oh, it's because it's nothing. It's a nothing movie. It's nothing at all. Might as well not exist. It's the film equivalent to drinking water.
I don't... Look, we've already talked all about Steve, right? And I don't know why you're bringing it up again.
Well, here's the thing. All About Steve is something. All About Steve is a shit show, a disaster. This is literally, like, just nothing. I watched this movie, Chris, and I watched this movie. So, little peek behind the curtain, listeners. I watched Avatar, the movie we're going to be talking about today, before Chris did. And we were talking about this podcast recording session today, just the practicalities of it. And Chris was like, oh, God, I hope it isn't like a 3-hour session. And I've already seen the movie going, it's not going to be. I cannot remember the last time I watched a movie for Rewind Reviews and felt had so little to say about a movie. It's a remarkable thing. And it actually speaks to, if you make something deeply, deeply bland and in the middle and safe, you can appeal to a huge, huge crowd.
Mm.
And that's not to say there isn't some good filmmaking here, but yeah, I think that's what this is.
Well, here's I just want to say, Dan, think how I feel, right? Because, and this will link us into history.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen this film twice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every time I've seen this film, it's because you told me to.
Is that right?
Yeah, because I watched it this time because you chose it for Rewind Reviews.
Yes.
And I went to see it in the cinema because you told me I had to see it in the cinema in 3D. We went together.
Yes, I do. I remember distinctly.
100% of my experiences watching this film are because of you.
Which means that you must be feeling kind of bitter right now that I'm here. Like it's nothing. It's a nothing movie. You're like, why did you watch it twice, Dan?
So I did. So basically, Dan, this came out in 2009. Dan and I were friends in 2009. We weren't. Were we living together? No.
Good question.
Yes.
I can't remember if this is just before or just or during the time we were living together. But yeah, it was around that time, around that
I think
era.
this was 2009. I think uni first year for me. First year was 7 to 8. Second year was 8 to 9. Mm-hmm. Third year was 9 to 10. So it would depend.
Yeah, but we didn't live together. We didn't clearly live together during third year and not second. We lived together for the end of second year because someone moved out. If you remember.
Yeah, well, also, if third year was 9 to 10, this came out in December 2009, so that would suggest we were living together. But basically, my memory of it is that you'd seen it. I think you'd only seen it once. I don't know for sure. Mm-hmm. And you were like, "You seen Avatar?" And I was like, "Nah, I wasn't bothered. That's not me being, because actually, we came out the cinema very positive. But you were like, "You seen Avatar?" And I was like, "Nah." And you were like, "You need to see it in 3D in the cinema." And I was like, "Really?" And you were like, "Yeah, it's an experience, like in 3D." In cinema.
And you know what? I stand by that. I
do. Yeah.
We'll talk about it in a minute, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I would absolutely. And you were like, you gotta come. I'll see it again. Let's go see Avatar. I'm like, all right. So a bunch of, I think it was a few of us. I think it was like 5 of us. We go down and we see Avatar in 3D in the cinema, and it was like there's two at the time. I don't think there is anymore, but at the time there were two cinemas in Bournemouth, and sort of one was like the main cinema.
They've merged into one now,
right? Okay,
because they were literally next to each other, which was insane.
Yeah, it was wild. But there were two cinemas. One that was kind of the more modern new one where stuff went first, and one where stuff then went kind of almost on its way out. And we saw it in the second cinema. Like, we saw it like... Well, it's weird, actually, if it came out December 10th. You know what? I even think we might have seen it in the new year. I don't think we saw it.
No, I 100%. I've had a memory about this that's clarified something. So finish your story, and I'll fill in a detail, I think.
So we see it like January, February, whatever, probably late January, 2010. Which means we were living together, because this is going to sound sad. That's 2009 to 10 is Tennant's last episodes as Doctor Who, and I watched his last episode of Doctor Who in our third year house that we shared. So we were living together. Anyway, we go and see Avatar, and it was stunning. It was 3D in the cinema. It was immersive. It was, it had a real easy advantage in that most 3D movies that had been released had been shit, and had been sort of like just things poking out the screen, especially during this period where it wasn't just so like we saw. I don't think you went with us. We saw a film in Edinburgh. We got to Edinburgh Fringe Festival the summer before this early. And it was pissing it down with rain, and there was nothing like we should have just wandered into any bar, and we'd have probably found a show. Like, the Fringe was on, but that's not what we did, because we were. Well, I don't think you were there yet, actually.
No,
so
you and Tom went early. You'd found a cheap flight a few days before we needed to be there, or a day before we needed to be there.
Yeah, so we basically went to the cinema, which again, on reflection, I'm like, why did we do that and not go to a bar and just find a show? But anyway, went to a cinema, and I can't remember what it was called. I'll see if I can dig out the name of it here. But it was a kids movie about, I think, rowing cats and dogs or something. It wasn't cats and dogs, but it was something. It was a kids' movie about animals fighting. And that was all right 3D. A hammer is thrown and it comes out the screen at you. A snake appears and it comes out the screen at you. I think, like, kids' movies that were designed to be 3D, Spy Kids 3D and stuff, were fine. But this was during a period where every adult movie had a 3D version that was ineffective to not very effective. So Avatar nailing it, and Avatar going, you can do this and make it immersive and make it beautiful, was fucking mind-blowing. It really was. You were sat in the cinema going, oh wow, this is immersive, this is wild. Like, the visuals here are stunning. We'll talk about how that translates to kind of 2D at home. But yeah, so I came out very kind of no real desire. I think I might have even said I never want to see that film again. I have this memory of saying I never want to see that film again. And you were like, did you not enjoy it? And I was like, no, I just think that was the perfect way to watch it. That was the perfect way to engage with it. And I can't imagine watching it at home is going to be any better. So part of me just wants that to be the experience. And you were like, logged that. I'm gonna convince him to do. First, I need to convince him to do a TV podcast. That's quite a low hanging. He likes TV. And then if I work my way to old movies, I can eventually get him to watch it again. But that was my memory. So yeah, I came out very positive. Came out glowing about the movie. Fill in the other bits.
So I went home for Christmas, as we all did, and I've got a buddy back in Manchester, Scott. Shout out for Scott. Whoop whoop. And
Scott.
We always used to find. I don't go back to Manchester at Christmases anymore, so I don't get to see Scott anywhere near as much. But at the time, the tradition was we always hung out over Christmas because I was always back home for a couple of weeks. My job means I don't get to go home for Christmas anymore these days, so we don't get to do that tradition anymore. But we used to always watch whenever the big movie was out together. So I went back to Manchester hung out with Scott, and we went to the IMAX at the Printworks, which is I think the second largest screen in the country, and did Avatar. Now, I'll first of all put a button on the Avatar 3D thing. There are multiple different kinds of 3D, and I will add that the IMAX 3D is the superior version because the IMAX actually uses two different projectors to create the 3D, rather than one projector split with a weird filter with the Excel. So there's two different ways that these 3Ds work. There's the IMAX 3D, and generally speaking, you saw it in what's labeled real 3D. Those are the two kinds you had. Now, the way the movie is shot and presented in 3D is the same in both, but the difference is the IMAX one, you don't lose any color, or it's not dimmer when you wear the glasses as a result, because it's two projectors creating that image so they can be brighter, so you don't lose any color or tone that way. So I still stand by that, like, the IMAX 3D is the superior 3D of the two. It's also the most comfortable to watch because, again, it's not artificially being split the image digitally. It's actually legitimately two, like, projectors, broadcasting their image out of whack to create that 3D blurry effect. I don't know how to describe 3D. 3D's a technology I clearly don't fully understand, but so I saw it with Scott, and we came out again really positive, and I was absolutely convinced that the story was nothing particularly special, and that the movie wasn't anything particularly special. And had it been shot live action, without the 3D, without all the special effects, without it being sort of like a live action CGI hybrid film, that it would not be of that much of interest. So when I come back and you've not seen it, and I remember distinctly that when we saw it in January, Nadia was visiting too, because I took Nadia to see it that day when we went to see it in Bournemouth. She was one of that group. This has all come back to me now. I remember being like, I know a bunch of people who have yet to see this movie in the cinema. It's clearly not going to be in the... Well, it probably did last in the cinema a fair bit longer, but this is like, sort of like 6-7 weeks into its run, so it's definitely starting to die down. And I remember the cinema still being pretty packed. I don't know if I'm misremembering that. I don't remember.
Yeah, no, I think it was. Yeah, for sure.
But I was just like, this movie will not. It's nothing special minus that stuff. But it is extremely immersive and the special effects are really well put together, and the production design is like second to none. The movie looks great, and you're only gonna ever see it in that format one time, obviously not realizing they'd be re-releasing it multiple times over the years, but like it was an opportunity to see the movie in this format. It wasn't going to likely be seen it again, and I really thought that like anyone who just comes to that movie a year or two later on Blu-ray or whatever isn't going to get the same experience out of it. And having now watched it in 2D at home, it's about right, because it's nothing without that stuff. It's just a really dumb movie, and I mean really dumb. And the only thing it has to say about anything is cutting down forests is bad. That's as deep as this movie gets about anything. It's... I'd go as far to say the script for this movie is actually kind of embarrassing. So we did see it together, and it was my second viewing, but it was under that logic of I just didn't want you guys to have missed out on that experience, because that was the experience. Strip that stuff away, this movie is absolutely nothing. And I think the same thing will be probably true of the second one. I think the second one's going to look great if you go see it in like IMAX 3D when it comes out. And I'm not even a big 3D guy. In fact, I would, as a glasses wearer, I actually can't stand 3D, and particularly that sort of like real 3D from non-IMAX or non-Dolby or basically single projection systems. So the Dolby screens we've got in the UK are dual projection as well, and they have a similar benefit to the IMAX one. Actually, they're laser projectors as well, so that they don't lose much brightness at all. The laser modules on those are really cool. Those they're just the neatest things. But yeah, so unless you're seeing it in one of those formats, I'm not a big fan of 3D anyway. And what's funny about this is this movie doesn't even have that kind of 3D where it like jumps out at you. Where like someone shoots an arrow at the screen, and it comes right out, and everyone goes whoa, because it's like right far. This movie had a real subtle use of 3D, and it was, I'll tell you the other big difference, Chris, it was designed with it in mind. So when he's shooting the movie, he's thinking about what things will come out slightly, what things will create foreground, background, and really make it an immersive feeling. Most movies that were converted to 3D during this era, when they realized they could make a couple of extra quid on a movie if it was converted to 3D, it was just like a really thoughtless filter, basically, that was stuck on top of a movie. The most egregious example, and I was forced to see it this way. I remember Star Trek Into Darkness. I could only see it on one particular day at one particular time, and it happened to be the 3D show, and I was fuming. And it was a fucking horrible 3D conversion. No one had put a second of thought into it, and it was just bollocks.
For me, and I know our memory. I think we disagree slightly on this, but for me, the worst experience was seeing the Day of the Doctor Who 50th anniversary in 3D, because in order to make it work, they dimmed the colours. I don't know if you remember this, but we came out and I'm like, it was pretty dark, wasn't it? Like I don't mean like the story, I mean like visually. Yeah. And we were like, I think that's something to do with the 3D. We go home and we go back to yours, we look at footage like from the TV show, and we're like, fucking hell, this is so much brighter and nicer.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, Chris. Between the tinting on the glasses and the way that the one projector has to split the image, that's what I meant earlier when I talked about how you lose color and brightness on real horrible 3D. The only projection system that avoids that is a dual projection system. So something like IMAX, or assuming it's dual projectors. Some IMAXs aren't dual projectors, but most of them are, at least the ones I've interacted with. And then the Dolby ones.
Just to fill in the blank, because it's people are going to be shouting the answer if they've worked it out. G-Force, which is a film about a team of guinea pigs played by Tracy Morgan, Penelope Cruz, and Jon Favreau, who they have to break out of a pet shop and prevent a computer virus from taking over the world. Also stars Zach Galifianakis, Bill Nighy, Will Arnett. And I think I read Nicolas Cage. But G-Force.
I don't want to put too much of a point on it, Chris, but Sam Rockwell, who's also in this movie.
Yeah, Sam Rockwell, Nicolas Cage, Steve Buscemi. I mean, arguably, quite a good cast. But that is the film. The Guinea Pigs Saving the World film is the film that we went and saw in 3D in Edinburgh the summer before this.
Brilliant. So long story short, I guess, like, this is a movie that you really did need at the time to see in cinemas, I think. Because I think that experience really distracts from the experience of it, and the visuals of it really distract from the story and its lack of substance, because it is, again, one of the blandest, most uninteresting movies I can imagine having watched when you don't have that stuff attached to it. So
yeah, I think so. And I just
so that's everything for this week, guys.
My favourite fact about this movie, and I think did we talk about it last week? I can't remember. My favourite fact about this movie is that it is the biggest selling movie of all time, and no one can ever name more than one character, if anyone can remember Jake Scully's name, which I think says a lot about the film. So we're watching the film last night, and that's my favourite fact about this movie. I go into this film with that being my favourite fact. And we pause it to get a drink or something at 2 hours and 15 minutes into a 2 hour and 45 minute movie. And I'm sat there and I went, I still can't name more than two characters. And I'd been paying attention. I'd not been on my phone. I'd been paying attention to this movie. But in my head I was like, Jake Scully. And then I went, and Grace, Dr. Grace. Sigourney Weaver's character is called Grace. Right, okay. And I turn to Jess and I go, can you name me two characters in this movie? And she goes, Jake Scully. And I go, yep. And then she goes, Evil Army Man? And then literally, I was like, no. And then later on, like we were in bed, we're falling asleep. And she just went, Grace. The doctor's name was Grace. And I'm like, okay, we can both name two characters. Like, it just doesn't... I just don't know if it grabs you like it, because as you say, it's actually quite a simple. Whilst it is a simple plot with complicated elements. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's things like the fact that it's the twin. Sam is the twin. Jake Scully is a twin, and the twin is a genetically matched to the Avatar, and therefore that's why Jake can take it over. But people don't like that at first and don't like that idea, but because they're twins they can do it, and he's dealing with his brother's death. That is basically he's gonna control the Avatar. That is complicating a simple premise for the sake of complexity, of being complex, because that doesn't add anything to the story. The brother's death, other than the first half an hour, doesn't go on to add, inform, or even get referenced beyond that in the story. It is an excuse to get an army person in the Avatar. But even that, they don't really explore. Like, this movie is full of these ideas that apparently seem complex, but actually a complexity hidden behind simplicity to make it seem clever, but make you still understand it. Jake doesn't even the turn at the end, that big rousing speech at the end. We go, this is our land, da-da-da-da-da. I turn to Jess and I'm like, I don't feel anything for this. And the reason I don't feel anything for this is because you've given the character a disability. When that character runs in that first scene that he gets into the Avatar's form, I believe then that he's going to potentially be willing to fight for them and turn for them and commit for them and be happier as that creature. Like, there's no conflict to him. There's no, but if I do this and sell information, then I get my legs because I've been promised my legs. We don't see him sell information. We don't really see him collect information. We see him learn the ways of that race and decide that he is part of that race. That's what we see. So there's no big turn. There's no big rousing moment because there's no layers to it. The layers are there on the surface. Oh well, he's conflicted because he can get his legs back if he turns on them. No, he's not conflicted though. We're told he should be conflicted because in one scene the army man offers him his legs, and in another scene he referenced getting them, and he in that scene says, "Well, no, I'm very close. I want to go back in." We don't. There's all these things which are stated and put in, but not actually utilized, from the brother to the conflict about him getting his legs back. All of these things are put in the movie, but not actually explored. The movie is A to B. He becomes an Avatar. He becomes part of this race. He decides to fight for this race. That's all that actually happens. And all of the fights and all of the conflicts and everything else has no real meaning, because whilst there's themes and there's character stuff put there, the idea, someone could come out of this movie and go, oh, well, the fact that, the idea being that Earth destroyed one planet and now it's going to destroy another for the same reasoning. Yeah, that's mentioned a couple of times. That's in there as an idea. It's not explored. Nothing is explored in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
cannot agree more. Like, that is, and you know what else that really frustrates me? A movie like this would thrive on drama derived from conflict as the two sides bump into each other. But he's never really torn between the two in the actual physical movie. He pretty much chooses the Na'vi, goes with the Na'vi, and then it's super easy after that. Like, I don't want to quote the guy from The Thing, but like, oh, is there going to be loads of conflict and difficulties as he tries to sneak around helping the Na'vi while also being inside that military base? No, actually, it's going to be super easy, barely an inconvenience, because the reality is he gets caught doing it almost immediately because he's an idiot and not subtle about it. He literally picks up a rock and smashes up their cameras, which they clearly see on those cameras. And then they're like, well, we're going to put you in a jail cell then. And it's like, that's okay, I've made friends. And one of his friends breaks him out.
Yeah.
And then they just, and then they're just very conveniently, because it's been previously set up, in their remote location, that the bad guys don't necessarily know where it is, continuing to just be Na'vi, help the Na'vi. The movie never really makes me feel like they're in danger or they're being challenged in any way. Like, he's never forced to make a difficult decision. It's so cartoonishly good versus evil that there's never really much conflict. There's never really much drama derived from it, and I don't really ever feel a struggle. Like, it's a nothing movie. What really made me laugh was earlier this year. I can't remember the exact quote, but James Cameron came out and was like, oh, you're all gonna watch. It's easy now. This many years on, you're all gonna watch Avatar. Because you're all ragging on it, but you're all gonna rewatch it and go, yeah, that was a great movie, and you could be excited for my sequel or whatever. And I was just like, maybe, sure, yeah, but there must be something to it, right? Everyone watched it, and look, there is something to this movie. It's incredible production design. That's what this movie has going for it, because the world of Pandora, the floating mountains with the waterfalls coming off them, these bioluminescent plants, the creature designs, which are all really cool. The world does feel alive. When Jake walks through Pandora the first time in the evening with Zoe Saldana's character, whose name I can't remember, because why would I remember anyone's names in this fucking movie? Something Tree, because I remember finding that a bit on the nose. Anyway, when he's first wandering through the forest with Zoe Saldana's character, I'll get the name up in a minute. That's really, like, this. You do get a sense of wonder. You do get a sense of something that's like more than just eating dry bread, but it's fleeting, and it will have been a lot stronger in the cinema with the 3D and all the the stuff that comes along with watching it on a big screen. But what's left when you take that stuff away? It's Neytiri. Or Neytiri. Neytiri? Neytiri. All right, there you go. I've got it. Neytiri. Do you remember that character Trudy, Chris? The character Trudy? No? What if I said Michelle Rodriguez?
Yeah. No, I know those characters.
Anyway, so I 100% echo everything you just said. I just think, like, there are so many opportunities in this movie to make this more than just a sort of like a theme park ride where you're just like, oh, let's explore all these cool visuals, and you'll be entertained in the same way you're entertained on a you're not going to feel anything for these characters, you're not going to care about this story, but you are going to really enjoy the ride because the visuals are really good. And I will say that there is a downside to doing a movie this way, and that is, unfortunately, the visuals have aged in many places.
Well, I was going to say, like, if we've upset people with with what we've just said, now I'm potentially going to really, put the pigeon amongst the roosters, or whatever the phrase is, because look, I can't stress enough, we've been very clear. In the cinema, at the time, in 3D, a visual spectacle. Stunning. Some of the best visuals, if not the best visuals I've ever seen in a cinema. Like, it was absolutely incredible. But now, 10, 12 years later, on a TV at home, there were moments that felt like I was watching a video game.
Yep.
Is the truth of it. Especially the battles at the end.
Something like this is never not going to age. That's there is technology will move on, the visuals will get better, and this will always feel dated. It was never not going to. Something like this is never age-proof, because that technology is constantly moving forward. Yeah. So I don't know, like, a movie like this physically cannot be timeless. Sorry. There are parts when things are floaty or whatever. Yeah, weird. Go on.
Well, there are parts. I think the world, and, like, especially the world at night, and the flying sequences, I think they hold up fairly well visually. It's the fights for me that were like, I'm watching a video game now. Like, the fight at the end and the fight when the trucks were in, bringing stuff down. And maybe it's partly because that is the combination of, human and CG, real, tanks and real people. Well, I don't know if the tanks were real, but, it's that combination of the CG, CGI always looks worse when it's meant to be a CGI world combined with a real world. It's that it's any CGI in that environment holds up worse. So I think the stuff where it's the pure world, especially when it's kind of like the purples and the blues and stuff, I think that stuff holds up better. But as you say, unfortunately, if you use the most state of the art tech and visuals of the day, it is eventually then going to not hold up. It's this is completely irrelevant, but it reminds me of a classic quote that Victoria Wood was told about sitcoms, which is, if you want a sitcom to be timeless, set it in the past, because it's never going to look out of date, because it was always it's meant to look out of date. And that holds up in the UK for Blackadder, Dad's Army, and a number of others. So yeah, I just think visually it doesn't. And this isn't the ideal way to see this movie. We've made that expressly clear. But I think that unfortunately now, that combination of some of the effects looking dated and the fact that there's no depth in a lot of it just means the movie washes over you. And I don't think you get particularly bored. It doesn't. I will give it this. It doesn't feel like a 2 hour and 45-minute movie. Weirdly, in some ways, it feels like a 5-part miniseries strapped together. You could chop it up quite easily and just someone watch it as a TV show.
Yeah. 3 or 4 episodes, sort of shorthand. For sure. I think for me the visuals, like it's anything like big scenery, backgrounds, that sort of stuff that you're not looking at in close up detail looks great. But when you get close up to some of the models, so they've put a lot of work into this, to the models and the assets and the textures on like the Na'vi. So you get real close up to like Jake Sully's face when he's in his avatar body, and like there's a lot of detail there. It looks really good, but a lot of the other things they have not been able to, because it's not practical to put that much time and effort into getting the detail on. And if for whatever reason the camera gets close up to them, they look weird and wrong immediately. Some of the animals in this movie, they come across, they end up having to do close-up shots, and some of them are clearly designed for that, and some of them are not. So the horses they ride are not. There's a couple of shots where they're on the horse, so the camera closes up on the character, and the horse becomes out of frame, and then it pulls back. You see the horse, but you see it from a distance, and it looks good. But then there are occasional shots that show the horses like riding in, riding out with them on it. And number one, the movement's all wrong. Like the horse's legs are going a mile a minute, but it's moving at a different pace. So that immediately sends my eyes funny, and I know that there's something not right. The physics, you just naturally understand. Your eyes naturally pick up on, it's an uncanny valley type thing, when physics don't quite work, when something doesn't hold the right weight, when its movements don't quite feel natural. And there are a couple of shots when they come in on the horses that look absolutely horrendous. And then there's mid-shots where you can see the horse in more close-up detail, and you go, oh, this model doesn't have anywhere near the level of detail put into it as the Blue Cat people, the Na'vi. So cool. That stands out like a sore thumb. There are some There's definitely a lot of action shots where there's a lot of movement where, again, the characters' movements, they're just too light and floaty, that just they don't have the right weight to them. And again, your eye notices this, and especially towards the end when there's a lot of like people jumping around, that's a thing. I will say they probably get away with it mostly when it comes to the Na'vi, because you could kind of go, well, it's alien, isn't it? It's like maybe they have less dense bones and they do move lighter than a creature from our world. Maybe that's kind of like part of it. But then, you know, there's the big like rhino things that charge through. They don't have the right weight to them. They kind of look like they float through the screen. And then all the human characters that are running through those last battle scenes have the same problem, you know, because they're all technically CGI beings too. And the big mech suit doesn't move right. I don't know. There's tons of this that's just like, yeah, if they made this today, it would look and feel a lot better. But then again, you do that today, make it look and feel a lot better. 20 years time, it's going to feel janky again. It's just what happens. Like this new Avatar movie that's coming out this year, the Way of the Water or whatever it's called, is going to feel janky and shitty in 20 years time. This is a nil-sum game. You can't win this game because the technology will always outpace your movie. So yeah,
it's the biggest selling movie of all time. Arguably, they've won the game.
But no, because James Cameron is still out there insisting it was this masterpiece, and I refute that. I refute that strongly. I think it's not even average. I think it's the equivalent to eating a plain piece of bread or drinking water. It's just like it exists. Is there anything technically like outright wrong with it? I guess no. Like my criticisms, it's not going to be like sitting down and watching one of those fucking Harry Potter movies where we like had 1,001 insane plot points to pull apart in real detail because like the logic of it just does not function. No. The logic of the movie tracks, the story of the movie tracks, the character arc tracks. It's just very simplistic. There's no real depth. The character, as we've already said, the character like arcs don't really like do anything other than the obvious thing. It's all a bit too easy, you know. You never feel challenged. The only point in the movie I felt any tension whatsoever is, I guess, towards the end, when they quite cleverly have the bad guy. We should talk more about the plot in a bit, because we're normally very story focused, and this has been a much more wider discussion, and I'm glad about that. But we should probably do some discussion.
Yeah, we haven't said as well, but probably don't recommend watching it unless you get a chance to watch it in 3D in the cinema, I guess.
Yeah, which it is being re-released. I don't know if it'll still be being re-released when this podcast goes out, but it has just been re-released. And I think once that re-release is out of cinemas, they're going to put it back on Disney Plus. They took it off Disney Plus a couple of weeks ago to do this cinema re-release. The cinema re-release apparently has updated visuals in some way. They've like patched the movie, I guess. I don't know what that means, but like they've like made some changes. So I don't know if that is like going to fix some of the stuff we were just talking about or not. I have no idea. But like I have an old Blu-ray. I literally have a Blu-ray copy that I must have picked up from CEX, you know, years and years ago. There's no way I paid full price for it, not in a million years, but I absolutely have a Blu-ray copy, which is what I watched it on this time. But yeah, which is lucky because, like I said, Disney pulled it. So I've lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, so we'll get to the story stuff in a minute. But like on the whole, in terms of like, you know, James Cameron's like this idea that he like made a classic, incredible movie, and that's why everyone saw it. I contend he made a really good piece of like, spectacle cinema, and everyone went, you gotta see it in the cinema, and that's why it made so much money, because it was a movie that demanded to be seen in that format. Because even the casual audiences knew it wasn't. It deep down knew it wouldn't hold up in any other format.
I think I might be wrong, and I will, hold my hands up. But I think the next one's going to be a success as well.
Yes, I agree.
For a few factors. One, people will be like, you got to see the visuals in the cinema, and two, there is now. It's been so long that a lot of people aren't going to rewatch the movie. There's a nostalgia factor. There is literally this is it's that feeling of, I remember I remember 2009, pre-pandemic, pre-energy crisis. I was young. I was chucking dairy in my mouth, like the glory times. I want to relive some of that. Let's go see Avatar in the cinema. So I think also,
I think there's some collective rewriting of what it looked like, right? Because I watched the trailer recently in front of another movie for the new Avatar, for the Way of the Water, and was like, I don't know, these visuals don't seem to have come along very far. This looks like the last one, right? And now I've rewatched the last one, like, no, because your memory fills in the gaps, right? Like I was not expecting to come on this podcast and say that the special effects had not held up, that it didn't, look that great. In terms of some of the CG, that's absolutely true, though. That's what happened, and so I think a lot of people as well have like done that thing where it's very common in video games actually. The idea that a classic game that you remember from your childhood, like it was like 2 pixels, blocky, weird heads, no fingers because they couldn't animate those properly, and like in your head it's this like really textured, colored in world that looks amazing. Because your childhood imagination like filled in the gaps almost, and then you look at it as an adult and you go, oh god, my memory of what this was is not the same. I have made this visually better than it was. So sorry, I dropped my headphone somehow. I don't know how that happened. One sec. Apologies. Yeah. So, and in terms of like the story stuff, the only tension, I think I didn't complete this point earlier. The only tension at any point I felt during this movie, and it's barely tension, is the section towards the end where the bad guy stumbles upon the part of the part of the forest through just coincidence because the plot needs him to, the trailer in which his real body is kept. So there's a fight happening outside of that, and the stakes are if he can get to Jake's body, Jake will be pretty defenseless. So that's the stakes of the fight, and that fight's okay. But, big but, it didn't work, but we just established a way for him to be transferred into the Avatar body permanently. Through Grace's situation. So even that doesn't have tension because you're going, well, that's okay if that body gets injured because they'll do it again and it'll work this time.
Yeah, especially because by that point we know that he's spoken to the tree and been heard because the tree sent the animals?
Yep, sure.
Hey, that's what the movie tells us.
Sure. Fine. Yep. The tree sent the animals, Chris.
And there's a lot of them.
There's a lot of animals. It's a big old planet. And here's the thing. Look, again, and I don't even think the action sequences are like terrible or anything, but I just think like there's so little tension to them because you just know the outcome of every single one. Like every time there's an action scene, I know exactly where it's going. Like it's they're gonna get forced out of that section of the forest, and then it's gonna be really sad for a minute, and then they're gonna have a triumphant return battle. Like the plot of this movie is so simple.
To be fair, I think that one, when Jake takes ages to wake up, but then when he does, they see the trucks coming and they're tearing down the forest. I think that one, in a way, I was surprised at how sad that was because I didn't have the timer up and I couldn't remember what happened. So I didn't know if that was going to be the triumphant final battle, for example. And it's like, actually, it's a real downbeat note. Now, admittedly, if you're following the hero's journey, there is a stage before the ultimate triumph where there's this huge loss. So it's following that. So maybe if I was kind of keeping a closer eye on the narrative, I wouldn't have been surprised. But you know what? Most people won't be sitting there going, "Oh, I expect we're going to get this stage of the hero's journey next." So at
the end of Act 2 is always the hero at their lowest point before they ultimately go on to win. Like, yeah, I suspect, even if not consciously, subconsciously, the casual audience is going, oh, this will probably work out, right? This is the bit where it's gone a bit wrong here, and now they're going to come back and have a big fight and win. Which is what happens. This fucking movie. All right. Should we talk about some of the characters and the specifics? I keep saying that and then thinking like I don't want to talk about any of the specifics of this. All right. I'll start with this one. I think the narration is a bit much. I don't need it.
Yes.
I'm not that dumb. The movie really spoon feeds me exposition constantly as a result of this, and I'd really rather it didn't.
I think the problem is the narration, like there's all this narration at the beginning, and then we cut to him recording a video, and you're like, oh, that's what the narration is. That's the setup. That's why there's narration over the setup. We'll be done with the narration now because he's recorded his video. Cool. And then he records another video, and there's more narration. And they play each narration. Like, by the end of the film, I was like, was the entire narration the final video? Was the narration the videos as he went along? Like, it's a weird device that he's tried to justify, but that justification makes it more complicated and difficult to understand.
But even if you're willing to go with that, even if you're willing to go, all right, it's one or the other. It's all from the end, or it was all from them across the way. It was just a selection of his audio logs from various points in the movie, helping texturize this. What does it add? That was what I couldn't quite get my head around. It was the choice of having a narration. It was just like, you don't get it. It's a body we've made for his brother. Like, honestly, you take all that narration out, all the information carried in it is also in the rest of the movie, naturally. You've got to work a little bit harder, maybe, and pay a little more attention. But I think that's fine. I think audiences can be challenged that way. Put it together yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know. So even if you can get past the you're right, like slightly like 100% where is this all coming from? Like, what's the timeline on this? Like, that there is definitely a question there. Like, but even if you're willing to just like make a decision, fansplain that, and go, okay, I think it's this or it's that, I still don't really understand, other than this weird fear that the audience wouldn't get it. Like, it was so complicated and so hard to grasp that they'd need it shoveling down their throats with really obnoxious narration. I don't know, man. I every time they would cut to the narration, whether it was they were showing it as being him doing it to camera, or whether it was times when the narration just sort of went over the visuals, every single time I was just thinking, what are we learning here? I don't really understand this. I don't know what we're getting out of this that we haven't gotten from what we're seeing in the movie ourselves, Yeah, like what we're actually witnessing with our eyes and our ears. Like, let me put it together,
Yeah, it doesn't need narration for sure.
Let the hints about his brother be hints. So the movie opens and he says exactly, my brother died, now I'm here. And then we get hints, like sort of subtle ones, like, I wanted a scientist, you sent me a Marine. Well, it was the DNA match. Like, that'd be intrigue if I didn't already know. I'd be going, oh, okay, so what's his situation then? He got sent because his DNA match. What happened to his brother? And then later in the movie, they clarify that a little bit further. You go, oh, okay, his brother died. So this is like, it would play out like a much better film, I think, you strip that. I don't know why it's there. I really don't.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. Especially because also, like you say, it's what we've already said. It's complexity disguised, in simplicity to make you think it's deep. Like we see the brother. Like, let's take that scene out as well. Let's take out the coffin burning cardboard box scene, and instead, like you say, have references to it throughout, and have it come back up later. Like, do you know what I mean? Like your brother would have never done this. He was a scientist. Your brother never would have done this. Yes, he would have. He wasn't even a soldier. He was a scientist. I don't know. Or maybe my brother always said I should be more of a scientist and less of a soldier. He's partly doing it to honor his legacy. I don't know, something, anything.
Chris, you've sussed it. You don't. I don't even know you've sussed it, but you've sussed it. The narration is throughout a couple of sections of the movie, and you're thinking, what's with the narration? You never see him recording logs. At the end of the movie, you find out that the narration we've been hearing is his brother.
Yeah.
And he's been listening back to his brother's old logs as he learnt about the Na'vi before coming. As he tested out the Avatar before coming. And he's slowly learnt the same lessons that his brother learnt.
Yeah.
And their journeys matched. And then maybe even hint that his brother didn't die through an accident, but maybe was starting to be a bit too on the side of the Na'vi or something. You could even make the industrial complex more villainous than they already are.
Yeah, and that army guy killed him because
sure, great. Give it some personal stakes. Why not?
Because when they're fighting at the end and it feels really personal, I was a little bit like, why is this so personal? Well, I suppose by that point he's, trying to kill his home. But, like, it was just like, this doesn't... I'm not sure the movie has earned these two fighting in this incredibly personal way. Mm-hmm. When actually, what's happened is Jake's gone against him, and that's, wound him up, and he's gone against Jake, and that's wound him up. But it's as with everything, it's very surface level.
Yeah, and I will say, like, Stephen Lang playing Colonel Evil. I forget the character's name, but Captain Evil Pants. He does an amazing job bringing that character to life. Stephen Lang, I think, certainly one of the most compelling characters in the whole movie, but written to be mustache twirling, cartoonly evil villain. The fact that Stephen Lang makes the character engaging doesn't completely make up for the script's deficits, because he's not. None of the characters are very complex. They all want one thing. None of them really grow or change beyond, this thing we're involved in is evil, and we're gonna turn on it. So, like, Michelle Rodriguez's character, Dr. Grace feels like she's already there at the start of the movie, just being quiet about it. And Jake, they go on that journey of, actually, this military action we're currently taking is wrong and hurting this planet and these people, and we shouldn't be doing it morally. But that's not a character arc. That's a realization, right? So what do any of these characters, name an arc for any single character in this movie that isn't just realizing the obvious bad guys are obvious bad guys? It's so thin. It's how Cameron thinks he had a masterpiece with this. I'm still scratching my head, and he wrote the fucking movie. Like, it's so dumb. It's so simple.
Yeah, I had this. I got really excited because I'd always enjoyed Titanic, and they re-released it in 3D. And I got really excited to go see it with my friend Siobhan, and was pumped about this, and went to see it. And had a good time because of the stupidity of it, and we had fun. But I'm sat there thinking, like, really taking it in for the first time as an adult, and thinking, the script is not very good. The script, the dialogue, in Titanic is the same problems as here. It's on the nose. It's it's say instead of show. Like, as a script. As a constructed movie, it doesn't hold together as well as the spectacle of the whole thing, And I'd argue that Titanic, pulls more emotion into the characters than this does. But it's the same problems, and it's also a Cameron script,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm learning as an adult maybe that, like, he's a better director than a writer. I think that's probably true. And look, let's not make the mistake here. Talk about James Cameron. Like, the man, for whatever reason, has his finger on the pulse. Like, he knows. He has got a real history of just knowing exactly what movie to push out at exactly what time. This came out at the exact right moment. The exact right moment to be the hit it was. Titanic came out at the exact right moment for it to be the hit it was. Either of these movies come out a few years to the left or the right on the timeline, and they don't do anywhere near as well. I can't put my finger on it. He just seems to understand what's going to appeal to a movie-going audience. But I will say there is a difference, in my opinion, between being able to put butts in seats when it comes out and actually having a movie that stands on its own and stands the test of time. And I, as much as I'm unable to criticize this movie because, of course, 2.8 billion is a lot of money, I still think that any of those people who spent that money at that time go back to it today, they're like, yeah. I don't see anyone feeling too differently about it than that. I really don't.
Isn't it? Side note about the sequel.
Mm.
Isn't it crazy that Sigourney Weaver and Stephen Lang are both back?
So we have I don't know, because it's a world where we're using DNA to replicate bodies. So
yeah, I guess, and apparently, and Sigourney Weaver's playing a different character, but it's a decision that smacks of, well, like working with those people, and the audience like those people, so let's find a way to put them in. Like it's a troubling sign for me of what this sequel could be.
Yeah, because are they also bringing back? They're not bringing back what's her face, are they? Michelle Rodriguez, because that would be the real one. That'd be that.
No, she's not listed on this cast list that I'm looking at here. No.
Yeah. Look at that. They've got. I'm not surprised that Lang's coming back though, because he said at the time, "You think 2 arrows are going to stop me?" So he knew something, I think, and gave it away.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so frustrating, Chris, because I really want to tell people. I was hoping I'd come back and be like, you know what? No, there is something to this movie more than these visuals and more than that experience that was so specific to the time. But there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. And that's not even going into some of like the weird details of the world as well. Like, why the hair sex? Why hair sex? Why?
That's something different, isn't it? I didn't object to hair sex so much. It's how they connect to animals. It's how they connect to each other, I guess.
That's where I have an issue. I think it's that they also use that to do everything else. Like they're connecting to the animals if to ride a horse, Chris, you had to, you wouldn't ride a horse. You feel? See what I'm saying?
Yeah. To clarify, I would not ride. I'd be like, nah, I'm good then. I'm all right.
Correct.
I'll walk.
Right. And I agree, and that's why I think that's actually the bigger problem. It's not, if it was just hair sex, you'd go, all right, weird, but that's how they do it, I guess. That's what the Na'vi body is built like, fine. But it's because they also use that exact same method of connecting to the animals they ride that really makes it sit weird with me. Come up with 2 different methods. Like have them mentally connect with the animals and then have hair sex, but don't do both. I don't want both.
I think my neighbours are banging something into the wall, so if you can hear that, apologies.
I'm sure it's fine.
I think again with other logic, because there's lots of logic throughout where you kind of like question the logic of the Avatar bodies and how he can, all of this stuff. But again, complexity. False complexity hiding simplicity, because do you know what Cameron's done to enable him to get away with most logic flaws in stuff like that? Magic tree. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, literally, it's like how can he transfer from his human body to his that magical tree? Oh, okay. Magic tree means you could get. Means you could get away with
magic forest in general, right? Like they say that the forest has like as many neurons as like a brain or whatever, and that it can think and feel for itself and what have you, and that the forest is like truly alive or whatever. But this is the same movie that brings us unobtainium.
Oh, that was so funny. When he said that for the first time, I laughed out loud. It just was like, what? I was like, the unattainable thing is called unattainium.
That's always going to be dumb. That's always going to be dumb. And now, and I know, for those wondering, unobtainium was a running joke for years amongst certain groups of scientists for a mineral that basically doesn't and would never exist. So they've borrowed that from there, but it was a joke. You can't make it the serious name of the thing in the movie. That's real dumb. It would have a name. It's an element, right? It would be named. It would have a a listing on the periodic table. Like, it would be added depending on its like makeup and stuff, and how many like I don't know, protons and neutrons and stuff it had, and whether it was positive charge. Well, I don't know. I'm not very smart, but let me tell you, I'm smart enough to know that unobtainium is dumb. That's what I'm smart enough to know. It's lazy writing. It's purely so that the dumb audience will go, oh, it's hard to get. That's why he chose the name. And he probably had an early lunch the day he wrote that down.
To get into some specifics,
he patted himself on the back and he went, all right, guys, we're done today.
Here's a question for you, Dan. Here's a question. Mm-hmm. Do you think we spend too much time with him learning the ways of the people and him bonding with her, or do you think we need all that time and those montages to justify him then, converting?
The second one. I think we need it. I do think we need it, and I think it's actually one of the things the film gets right. I wish they'd found a way to somehow balance it better with his subterfuge, because the real tension of this movie should have been him playing both sides and being forced to constantly pick between the two, and do it in a way that meant he could keep playing as a double agent. That should have been the tension of this movie, right? But they didn't do that. He's very unambiguously on one side. But to the movie's credit, they use that to convince me this is a thing, because they want me to believe not only that he's gotten in with this group, but he's actually been accepted in the tribe as one of theirs, gone through the initiation ceremonies, got on his flying pterodactyl thing, all that stuff. There's a part of me that thinks if they'd rushed through that, we'd be sat here now going, it's ridiculous. Some human gets a body and just becomes a member of the tribe out of nowhere. Come on, movie, convince me that's a thing. So I feel like they did that. That's one of the few things the movie I think really does get right, is they really do. The one thing Cameron seems to have really understood is he had to really sell you on that turn, on that, human becoming part of the Na'vi's world. Jake Sully from Earth becomes tribe, not even just a member of the tribe, but seemingly an almost leader of the tribe. He works his way up real quick. I guess sleeping with the boss's daughter, it has its perks, but
wasn't it fated? Isn't there a line about there's been a sign we need to take him to? Yeah, but they take him to the dad.
Yeah, but that's just Zoe, what's her face's character, seeing all those little seed things, the little white seed things float and land on him. That was it. That was the sign, apparently.
Yeah. Oh, it's flipped. I'm saying, but again, it's what we've been saying all along. It's there. The reasoning for that. The explanation for that is there. It's just there in one scene and glossed over. It's there to be there so that when someone says, "But what about this?" someone else can come back with, "Oh yeah, but it was fainted in the stars of the magical forest and tree." Mm-hmm. Magic tree.
Magic tree. So
okay,
go on.
Here's another question then. I'm going to fire questions, so because I feel like you like me have these sort of big overarching views, and usually there's a little bit of detail. So I'm not for extending unnecessarily, but to add some questions then. Mm-hmm. The fight scenes, in particular the one at the end, too long? Do we think too much time on that? Too many?
That's a good question.
Big flying things.
That's a good question, because I think. Christ, that's because I think it would feel a lot less long if we didn't then immediately do the personal one-on-one fight, which I think is the fight that really needs to happen. The whole movie's building up to the industrial military complex just marching through to get their unobtainium. So we have to have that battle. But it's when you do that and then immediately follow it up with the one-on-one sort of more personal, scrappy battle for Jake Sully's life, basically. That's when it starts to feel overlong, but you need that too. So it's a really good question. I think maybe it is too long. Maybe you could edit some of this down. I mean, the visuals are pretty good. I actually like a lot of that action towards the end. Seeing the Na'vi on the flying things, like leaping off them and shooting arrows through like people on the backs of, you know, helicopters, firing machine guns, and like there is just something really weird about this mix of imagery, you know, this very, very earthy sort of like science fiction technology in this like lush green world with these floating mountains, and they're like, you know, fighting these big blue cat people. Like there is something very weirdly engaging about it because it's such an interesting visual to see these two things side by side. They almost look wrong together. But yeah, it probably is too long. It's because there's so much repeated imagery. It's a lot of like, we're shooting arrows at people and they're firing guns, and like, and also it's got that Matrix problem of I never really understand the stakes of the battle. Like, I understand the stakes ultimately, you know, it's their forest, that thing, but like I don't understand the individual battle stakes. Like, if the certain ships make it to certain points, is that gonna be a problem? Like, is there because at one point they kind of hint there's like one particular ship that carries a lot of bombs that they're gonna drop on the tree, but set that up first so I have some investment in whether they stop that particular ship. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have a...
I don't know. There's quite a lot of scenes with the bombs and shots of the bombs about to, and we see the bombs about to, because then they do that really funny thing where which did make me laugh, where in a cruel way the bombs are about to drop, and then I think it's Jake or someone gets on it and basically means the ship move, and the two like crates of bombs crush that bad dude.
Great. But I mean, earlier in the battle, when all the ships just arrive, I don't know which ship needs to be the focus at that point. But at that point, it's just they're fighting the ships, good, evil, having a punch up, having a shoot off, arrows and bullets. You know, it's only right when it's relevant that someone's like, "This is the ship with the bombs. You care about this now." Like, and at that point, like, yeah, okay, but suddenly I'm really, like, oh, that's a goal, that's a target, but not prior to that.
It really made me laugh, though, because it is set up, but in a really egregious way. Basically, do you not remember this? They zoom in as they're preparing for battle. They zoom in on the bombs, and on them it just says explosives. It's just like hovers.
But you could interpret that just as a general. You could just interpret that as a general. Oh, they're preparing for war. You know, as like a more generic, like it's they're bringing guns and bombs. Like, when it gets out there into the world, and it's like it's one specific ship that has that threat inside of it. Why weren't we already aware of that? Why when we're having a big flying battle, isn't it all the other ships surround that one? We know that one is got the payload. That's a transport ship for explosives. If that reaches a certain point, game over. Because then we can have the tension of them having a fight through the ships that have encapsulated it, circled it, to get to that one. And we can even have, you know, command center humans sat around computers. We're 3 clicks out from the target. They've not taken out our ships yet. We're 2 clicks out. We could have like a build of like tension there. You know, like they're getting closer to where they're going to drop those bombs, and the Na'vi have only got X amount of time to stop that. I don't literally need a timer on the screen, but like I don't know, it's because otherwise it's just a lot of flying around and shooting arrows. And while it does look good, as I said earlier, and it is a really cool visual, you basically either do what I've just suggested, like give it some level of like stakes where I understand what the targets and goals are of these two forces, or cut it down, or make it a few minutes.
I did enjoy as an action sequence though, like seeing Jake chuck the explosives in, and like when that ship goes down, it's quite cool the way it basically explodes itself, and Jake and the army guy fighting on the ship as he's trying to, and him realizing what he's about to do, so moving slightly so only one side gets blown. Like it's all serviceable, good action sequence stuff.
Yeah, the thing is, as individual moments, they're all reasonably well done. But it's for me, if you're going to do big scale action scenes, it's the same problem we had with Harry Potter. It's the same problem we had with
The Matrix Revolutions.
Matrix Revolutions.
Referenced it earlier. It really brought to mind the Matrix Revolutions as I was watching this.
Yeah, and I think because I think the gold standard for large scale battle is always going to be Lord of the Rings, right? And we only watched those quite recently, so it's a bit unfair because basically the best example of the large scale battle, still feeling like you understand where everyone is and what the stakes are for each individual combat scenario, is Lord of the Rings, right? That Battle of Helm's Deep from the second movie. Every single time the orcs make it through a door, over a wall, you understand what that means for the big picture, right? You're not just focused on the fact that Legolas has shot a certain one or whatever. You can see the big picture of what this combat scenario is, right? You're not just focused on your heroes. You see the wider targets for the bad guys and the things that need defending for the good guys. So you feel losses and victories visually just when you see orcs getting over a certain wall, right? Because you've had the layout explained, you've had it all set up properly. The bad version of a large scale combat situation that involves a lot more than just your heroes is this. Because you don't understand what the goals and stakes are until they're immediately relevant. The same way that in Matrix Revolutions, they're just suddenly like, oh, they're going to get through the gate. That gate's really important. And it's like, is it? Thanks, I guess, movie, for telling me right now instead of setting it up earlier so I could just visually understand that. It's just very frustrating. And you're right, there's so much cool action. So you either need to flesh it out better with stakes and exposition and stuff earlier on so that when the fight's happening I have all that context, or pare it down. So I get all the cool visuals. I get Jake flipping around the jumping off his winged thing, doing whatever, and then leaping back off again. I get a couple of those visuals. I get the scale of it, and then we're down on the ground and we're having our personal fight. One or the other. Making it longer doesn't make it the Battle of Helm's Deep. The Battle of Helm's Deep was the Battle of Helm's Deep through really clever storytelling and visual choices. You can't just make the fight long and expect to achieve the same thing. And there is a spectacle to it. The visual of all those birds coming down is great. But what does it add? What's it adding? What it's adding, Chris, is minutes of my life ticking away as I sit through this movie. Let me ask you a question, because you keep asking me questions, and I keep giving long answers. Let me ask you a question. Grace as a character and her death. The movie plays it real emotional. Do you care?
My problem with Grace, and it's linked to I was going to ask you about performances, and I was going to say the reason I struggle with performances in this is because a lot of the performances are great, but because the characters are so unevenly written, so like juxtaposing scene to scene, it comes across like almost bad performances when actually they're just doing the best with what the scene is asking them to do. And Sigourney Weaver and Grace is my big example of that. We meet Grace, and she's a hard ass who does not like Jake Sully at all, resents the fact that he's there. He's a soldier, not a scientist, really angry. Hi, how can I help? You can help by being your brother, or I wanted your brother, or something like that. Like she's really sharp with him. Jake goes into the Avatar body, is an arsehole, is not listening to anyone, is, no, I'm fine. He's arrogant, I can do this, don't worry. He's pushing people out the way, he's destroying science equipment as he just decides that he's capable. He bounds outside, he runs, we have a really difficult moment because we're meant to feel joy and pleasure for him because he's able to run and he's, it's a real triumphant moment for him, but he's just been a bellend. So we're a bit kind of resentful of the fact that he's been a twat. So it's quite hard to feel the triumph in that moment because he's been a dick. But, fine. So he's running, and then he sees Grace. Weird that Grace isn't witnessing her new two scientists become avatars for the first time, and is instead playing basketball. Okay, though. So he runs, he meets up with them, And she's like, "Hey, military man, oh, you getting your legs out?" And it's just a completely different. I'm like, what the fuck? The character you have set up originally is a hard-ass scientist that doesn't like this guy and doesn't think he's going to do isn't going to do a good job. Would she not be watching them wake up for the first time? Would she not be there to witness it and control if something goes wrong? Would she not be annoyed that he's broken scientific equipment and not followed protocols? Like, so the Grace character is the antithesis of whatever the scene needs to be. When she needs to be a hard-ass human who's after a smoke, she can be a hard-ass human that's after a smoke. When she needs to be someone who is teaching the Nabi, is it Nabi or Naboo? Nabi?
Na'vi.
Na'vi. When she needs to be someone who loves the Na'vi and is basically one of them, and her avatar is the one they love and respect, and she wants to teach them things, she can be that character. So Sigourney Weaver is brilliant in all of those scenes as all of those things, but the fact that the script isn't really consistent with her character and who her character is a real problem, and therefore I found it slightly hard to buy the stakes, because the character's been so all over the place that I wasn't overly invested in the character. I was more upset that character died because it's Sigourney Weaver, and Sigourney Weaver is a great actress, and you're like, oh no, Sigourney Weaver's, like, that's how you feel. You literally feel, oh no, Sigourney Weaver's dead. You don't feel, oh no, Grace is dead, because you don't really know who Grace is.
No, because
in
my
opinion,
consistency to how she's characterized, and I think they try to patch it over. They have a stray line that I really found funny. And again, I'm paraphrasing. I don't want to pretend I'm quoting the movie here, but there's a moment when Jake says something akin to, Grace still doesn't like me, but now I'm in with the Na'vi. She's at least pretending she does, or something like that. Like to
he says like she knows that I'm talking to the Colonel, but she also knows that I'm in with the Na'vi or something. Yeah.
So it's something. Like, they try to patch it over as she's playing the game. She knows, like, the idea being that, like, oh, it's not a contradiction. Because it feels like they finish the script and look back over it and we're like, Grace is being consistent. All right, we'll throw in a stray line that suggests that she sort of also understands how to play the game a little bit with the military guys. So she sort of, like, she knows how to sort of play nice enough to get what she wants out of them, but
it's a hell of a game, isn't it? Like, because you've got this brutal military who are willing to cut down their precious trees, and they've had enough, and we're here for unobtainium, and at the same time they've built a school and allowed people, Grace in particular, to bond with them and allow that to happen. And the contradiction of just that alone, like, would it not make more sense if the army guy, if there was a line about how the, General Villain, played by Stephen Lang, if General Villain was like, I've been here a year trying to overturn some of this stuff and it's not worked, and he's been on it. The guy who was the brother in Friends, I believe that's the actor. The head honcho of that, the one who makes the decisions.
Yeah,
if he was like,
for some reason, I thought was Sam Rockwell, but is not Sam Rockwell. I don't want to, in case anyone's yelling at me from the beginning, because you mentioned G-Force, and I said, which has Sam Rockwell in it, who's also in this movie. He's not in this movie, so.
I must admit, ever since I have been in my head, I've been meaning to loop back round to, who did Sam Rockwell play? Because I missed Sam Rockwell completely.
I thought he was this guy, but he's not.
Right. So Steve, he says to him, I've been here for a year trying to change things, and you won't listen to me. And he's been hounding him. And instead of just you going, how has this happened? Because these two things are very contradictory. So the notion of general bad guys come in and feels like they've been too soft and they've allowed the school to happen and all of that stuff. Instead of the implication that he and Sigourney Weaver's characters have been going alongside each other, because it feels like this tension would have broken a lot sooner.
That's 100% right. And I think the explanation, and I think this is true to real world, is that there's a government somewhere.
Yeah.
Obviously, the people on the ground are all reporting to a body of some kind, right? President of Earth, President of America, President of something, right? Like some government that exists. You know, we don't. It's hundreds of years in our future, so who knows what that government is shaped and looks like. Part of the problem with the movie, again, no context for what's actually going on. I think in the original drafts of the script, the Earth was like dying of like being overpolluted and stuff. You know, let's drive home the message of nature good even more ham-fistedly than we do here. So it's like we've ruined Earth and now we're here to ruin Pandora, which is kind of a funny idea. But like, so my assumption is that, you know, we've got there's a bunch of politicians somewhere and they're like, you know, it could very well easily be as something as like they kind of want to do the military thing because it's the easiest, but at the same time they've got public opinion to sway. So look, we tried to work with the Na'vi, we built them schools. You know, those sort of programs existing alongside military action is not too surprising. But obviously, from the perspective of the movie viewer, we never see that. So. You know, we never hear about that. We never, you know, they're never talking to some governor or senator or, you know, or even someone else further up the chain. You know, we just got these individuals talking about what they've got the authority to do and not to do, and it's all a bit vague. So yeah, it's another one of the ways in which the movie is quite dumb, actually. So yeah, I don't care for that part, but that is the explanation. Is that they're reporting to someone, but you're right. In the movie, it ends up just coming across kind of muddled.
Yeah. What's your favourite part? What do you think is this movie's best achievement? Other than, because my answer to that would be a cheat answer, and your answer would be too, which is the visuals at the time and how it felt in 3D in the cinema. So other than that, what's this film's best achievement?
It's the production design. It's, you know, Jake wandering through Pandora the first time with Neytiri, and like they're touching certain flowers and they're bioluminescent and they're leaping over logs and it's like it's at nighttime and all these colourful glows and stuff. That and like when they first see the floating mountains as well. Like those visuals will and designs are just unparalleled. They're incredible. It looks so good, and it's so inventive. You know, it remains very, very strong. Like the creature designs too are all really clever. A lot of 6-legged creatures for some reason. I don't know why that was the mandate. Basically, everything that lives on Pandora that isn't the Na'vi or the humans has 6 legs, and I'm not really sure why, but cool, fine. You know, and I do think the attempt to establish, we're about to step into some because I'm about to give it a compliment before I then absolutely tear it a new one. I do think the attempt to legitimately create another culture makes a certain amount of sense. And I think there is a lot of effort been put into making the Na'vi feel like they're a real culture. Like, they do have lots of their own sort of beliefs and things. But I think it's deeply problematic. They're portrayed as these, you know, there's this othered. They've been othered in a way. Their science and technology are, you know, beyond them. And they're all just, like, about the trees and stuff. And it just feels like a privileged white guy's version of what a native culture would be like. Yeah. Their lack of understanding of humanity and their machines makes them seem dumb, and I feel like, you know, in reality, they would already be working out how human tanks work, not to recreate them themselves, but how to disable them. You know, they'd be figuring stuff out about what their weaknesses are. And I feel like the movie makes the Na'vi seem real dumb.
Well, also, as the Honest Trailer points out, you've got this native community, and who has to save them, Dan?
Yeah, correct.
The white man,
the white guy. So, you know, there is some real problematic elements to this story. I think they a little bit get away with that white savior thing, just on the grounds of, in the end, he chooses to become physically, literally one of them, but it doesn't quite make up for it.
Yeah.
That is one thing that this movie has over something like The Last Samurai.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Because obviously, like, they can literally make him choose to become physically and mentally, give himself up to them in terms of body as well. And that's a luxury a science fiction movie has over another movie of this nature. But yeah, it's there's tons of really problematic stuff around the way the Na'vi are portrayed. But at the same time, I must admit, they feel more like a real culture with a bit of with fleshed out beliefs and a language that seems like a legit real language, and than anything else. I guess it's not anything else, but than a lot of the contemporaries to this movie that have attempted to do this idea.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
It's a bit cartoonishly done in places where there's that guy in the village that hates Jake for just no reason. Well, not for no reason, but he's just they've just made one guy the voice of the. I love it when movies do this, when there's a group of people, whether it be a culture or a race or just a specific group of people, and they represent that group of people's beliefs through just individual characters. So there's this one character that just hates Jake and what Jake represents. And you're supposed to just go, I guess some of them still feel that way?
Yeah, I think the problem is we don't really see, unless I'm not remembering, do we see that same character interact with and show disdain for Grace?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think we do.
Because it's easier to buy if his problem is the fact that it's an avatar. The fact that Jake's an avatar. And therefore, he's got that problem
he makes
with
multiple
Grace
references to his fake body.
Yeah, so if we see him rally against Grace as well, but then you can't do that because it lessens Grace's death and their attempts to save her and stuff.
Right, and this is the problem. The movie kind of finds itself in is it's a bit conflicted because we just talked about this when we did, and I hate to bring it back to it, but we just did the Harry Potter movie with the horse that picks the president, and we talked about the muddled politics and the lack of clarity on what people on the ground actually believe. They vote for obvious fascist, and it's never really explained why. And I think, if you're going to do that story, then you should probably give that some context. What has he sold people on? Because it's probably not fascism, because historically fascists usually sell the public on some item, relating to fear-mongering or nationalism and pride or whatever, but we never really found out what Grindelwald wanted to convince people of. But so in this, you've got a large group of Na'vi, all of whom are individuals and have their own beliefs, and we never really get a sense of what the different things the different Na'vi are thinking about all this. We only ever get sort of Jake and the leaders' perspectives, and I think it would have been nice to include scenes where we get a sense of just what does average Joe Na'vi think to all this, I think that might have given me a bit more incentive to feel for them if we'd just seen suffering at the hands of humanity's choices. Wouldn't it have been nice? Just a little pitch, just a tiny pitch, little scene. Jake goes out to hunt with not our main character Na'vis, just some randos. That he's in with the culture now. It's his turn to go hunt. Every other day, different people go hunting or whatever. And he goes out to hunt, and they find a field where they usually are able to, catch something to eat. And they've all been slaughtered. And there's nothing left. And humanity have just killed them for funsies. A one particular cell of the military group went in there for shooting practice. Killed a bunch of these animals. Left them to rot, didn't do anything with them, didn't respect them in their deaths, and are just fucked off. And we see average Joe Na'vi feeling the hurt, the damage done. Or even just they've burnt down a part of the forest. It doesn't need to be as specific as they've killed animals, but they've physically done something to the environment that's really negative. And we see its impact on individuals. Not just, hey, they're coming after your special magical tree. They're actually just impacting your environment in general.
They really want that tree, man.
I really want that tree. A small scene like that, which wouldn't have taken much time in the grand scheme of a movie like this, I think would have made that all a lot better. I think because we have no sense of what the any Na'vi individually thinks, other than humans bad, humans coming for Special Tree. Because also there's all the artificial drama of that too. Oh, what, you knew they were going to do this? Well, yeah, but, whatever. And they're all mad at him. And then he comes back and he's like, oh, I've caught this big bird. Now you all like me again, right? I caught the big one. Do you remember the big one? I've got that. I'm on your side again, yeah?
Didn't even really catch the big bird, did he? The big bird just came to him.
No, he catches the big bird because it has that. I mean, actually, to be fair, one of my favorite moments in the movie, actually, in terms of the writing, is that it's such a dumb idea, but there is just something kind of like primally funny about it, like cool about it, which is that idea of when I'm flying around, when you're flying around out there on those birds, you've always got to look up and always got to watch your back because there's always something bigger. And then he goes, but my logic is, if that's the biggest and baddest bird, then maybe it doesn't look up because it doesn't need to, and then he leaps off his smaller bird and actually just goes for it from above. So he gets the big bird thing and then flies in like, hey, I caught the big scary one that you're all terrified of. Now
you're right.
Do you believe? And that's how they solve. That's how he solves the betrayal. Hey guys, I caught the big one. I'm one of you. What?
Yeah,
Wait,
magic tree, man. The signs. He's the big bird. It's all linked. Good stuff.
All right. Just like I remember watching it, thinking like they do the thing where you've betrayed us, Jake Sully. You knew all along that they were gonna they were coming for our tree, and you didn't tell us. Get out of here. We don't want to talk to you ever again. He comes back. He's like, shit, they've moved on. I better go. I need to warn them that they're coming or whatever. They're not gonna believe me. All right, I'll go catch the big bird, and they'll believe me then. What?
Magic.
Explain yourself,
tree.
movie. What does that mean?
Have you got any other notes before we triv it up? Which I will be saying again more enthusiastically.
Yeah, sure. Here you go. I've got the line, just so you know. The great Linopotrix glides effortlessly along the ridge where Jake and Nitri first encountered him. It scans for prey below. Its magnificent indigo-crested head cocking left and right. Jake's voiceover. The way I had it figured. Turok is the baddest cat in the sky. Nobody attacks him, so why would he ever look up? From above, the small shadow of Jake's banshee falls across the back of the mighty Turok. But that was just a theory. Jake dives and we rush towards the great beast. And then we cut to the Na'vi. And then Jake flies in. Hey guys, forgive me for the betrayal yet? That's what it says here in the script, word for word. I've not made that part up. Kidding. I made that part up. Anyway, yeah, I've got some of the notes, I'm sure. But yeah, that's a dumb movie. I really like the stylized subtitles. More movies should do this. I don't know why they don't. Don't just do boring subtitles. Like if your movie needs subtitles, give me cool stylized on-screen subtitles. I remember there was a movie, it's called like Night Watch or something like that, and that had really cool stylized subtitles. And this movie has really cool stylized subtitles that are in like a particular font, and I think it looks good. I like it, more engaging. And you can choose specifically where to put them when you do them that way. I like it.
Yeah, and it helps define the world, doesn't it? And set the world up and stuff.
Yeah, they blend in better. You've got more choices. You can like select where you put them a bit better because you're taking full control of them when you do that. So you're like, you can make them slightly left aligned so that they're not like on top of like the face of the character, or you can just do a few different things. I just think I think all film directors should pay attention to when if you've got a movie that's mostly in English, but then there's scenes where it's not. You should look at like hard coding subtitles into your movie visually with stuff like that, because I think that's better for everyone.
I'd agree.
Do you think it's weird that we first see the Na'vi through an avatar and not by meeting the actual Na'vi?
Ooh.
Because I found that strange on this viewing, and I've never thought that before, but it did occur to me.
Yeah, you're right. That's a bit weird, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why can't we just have an introductory shot of them? Maybe they look up and see Jake's ship land or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that is odd. You're right.
Because like when we see it through the avatar, there's part of me going, is that what they all look like? Like the first time.
Yeah, no, you're right. And they don't even make a big deal when he runs past other ones, I think, or or the other avatars, or when he meets them, it's kind of, yeah. No, you're right. That is weird. Yeah, I think it is.
Mm. On another note, did Sigourney Weaver, Grace, have a special giant Stanford hoodie made so she could wear her Stanford hoodie while in her avatar?
Oh, that just in general, that's so dumb. Like they, we can integrate and we can be with them and learn their culture. Stop wearing clothes then. Take off clothes. Yeah. What are you doing?
Yeah.
What?
Yep.
Have hair underwear or whatever they've got going on.
Agreed.
That was dumb.
Mm-hmm. I did note that the Na'vi sometimes look weirdly rubbery texture-wise. I think that's just, of the time. A movie with morality so simple it's basically a children's book.
I mean, it's not I wrote that incorrect. Down. Yeah, you're not wrong.
I forgot I'd written that. I wrote as well, I do like that the first thing he does when he has his legs back, even though you're right, it does make him obnoxious, that he just, runs off and ignores everything everyone's telling him to do. It is compelling to see a character making choices for himself in this movie.
It is, and it's triumphant, but I think the problem is they just play up. It just lasts a bit too long, him being obnoxious in the hospital. I think if you do that scene quicker, and you have it be less he's outright ignoring people, maybe there's no one else in the room and they're trying to speak to him over the speakers and he whips the speaker off the wall and they're like, what, now he can't even hear us, something like that. He just is just a little too obnoxious for a little bit too long in that scene.
Yeah, I would agree.
Is my issue with that. Yeah,
I would agree. I noticed as well that Zoe Saldana's character, whose name I keep forgetting and I'm having to look at. Fuck, where is it? Christ. Neytiri. She has the Grace problem as well. Of at first we meet her, she's grumpy at Jake. She doesn't want to deal with him. She's like, "You're an idiot. You're gonna get yourself killed. Get out of here." And then those seed tree things attached to him and she's like, oh, and then she just completely changes and we never get a hint of her initial grumpiness again until she thinks she's been betrayed. But even then that's way more tinged with emotion and stuff. What are we doing here? I made notes about her character being a little nonsensical. The movie needs her to care about him, so they were just yeah, he's magic because the magic tree said so. She believes that, and now she'll fight for him, and she'll help get him
magic
integrated.
Tree, baby.
Magic tree. I like the sequence of him learning how to tame the flying thing. I think that sequence is pretty good. As a rite of passage for an RV and him going to do it and showing his determination, even if he gets thrown off once, getting straight back on. That's all pretty good. I like that stuff.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And I would say as well, that stuff justifies why no one else had the same luck integrating that, that before he got there. Because could you see the nerdy guy or Grace having the grit to push through with some of that stuff that they have him doing in that montage?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, actually. That is quite... whether a deliberate choice... I don't know.
Yeah.
But that is quite a good notion that actually his soldier background, his willing to dive in a bit more, is what they recognise and respect, right. And that's why he's the first one to fully integrate. Yeah.
Yeah, the physicality over the science. That's for better or worse, and we can talk about the othering of a native people by sort of making them be the ones that can't possibly do science or critical thinking. They're all about being physical and living in the living in the forest and running around and being it's all about physicality, but whatever. But I can and will complain about that. But just from a practical perspective, I just don't see Grace or the other nerdy guy being as willing to do and integrate in that specific way, which I think is what gives him an edge on them, having his military background.
Yeah, I think it's a really good observation.
Makes him relate to the Na'vi a little better. What else have I got notes on here? Oh yeah, I have actually also written down. He wins them over by catching the big bird thing. ... Sure, I wrote that down because why not? Oh, okay, right. So I think it's already a weird choice that they have him sleep with Neytiri, because I just don't know if that really adds to the plot. I don't really think that does anything, because originally in the script, apparently it was going to end with them revealing she was pregnant. That was going to be the reveal at the end of the movie. So it's already a strange choice in my opinion, because you've removed that ending. So I don't really know why we need that, but then
well, I think it represents just how close they've become, so that she really feels his betrayal.
Sure.
And it makes the other characters angry for a moment. Like,
okay. All right.
They get over it when he lands on the big bird, but I think it adds stakes to that.
All right, you know what? Fine. Let's go with that then, right? Like, it helps give emotional weight to the betrayal later on. Do Na'vi have kissing too? Because I get the... I don't get. I've raised my concerns about the hair sex, but they start kissing, like human kissing. Do Na'vi have kissing? They develop the exact same cultural thing for kissing?
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's fine.
Is it? That makes sense? You think it's likely another
speak.
culture will have developed the exact same method for displaying affection, even though they've got a very different method for mating?
I think it's weirder and I get that maybe Grace is it that Grace has taught them English?
Yeah,
but I think.
Yeah,
I think
too many
that's
of them
weirder.
know English. It's very strange.
Yeah, I think them all knowing English in a way is weirder than kissing.
All right, fine. I found that strange. I found that weirdly hard to believe that they would have culturally developed.
God, you're not happy if they have sex via their hair. You're not happy if they kiss. How do you want? Do you just not want them to mate, Dan?
No, I'm happy for them to mate, but don't mate using the exact same methodology you talk to your horse. I think that's reasonable.
I think kissing's fine.
Yeah.
They run, they walk, they presumably go to the toilet, they sleep. Do you know what I mean? They sleep. Like, that's, yeah, I think there's just, in science fiction, there's just, because I've thought this before, like, about, when you see things and you go, would an alien do that? Actually, to be honest with you, the most egregious one for me at the moment is when you see stuff set in the past and the people talk with modern, like, colloquialisms. That really, like, winds me up.
Yeah.
It really makes me angry. You'll see something set in the past and someone will be like, "Oh, it just really sucks, man," and you're like, "What are you doing?" Like, "Oh, it's so annoying." Or they say literally, and you're like, "But no, that's a modern So I've bumped into this before, but I just think it's fine. Just maybe you're right, but it doesn't bother me. Maybe that's it. I don't know.
Fair enough. I did write down as well, when they attack the trees, to get them out. Like, it's very dramatic, but these are not very complicated emotions. Sad because forest burn is about as complicated as this movie gets. I wrote down GI.
Yeah, maybe we should do more to stop our forest burning.
No, maybe.
Maybe that's what the movie was trying to tell us all along.
Forest be good.
That is obviously an important message for
me feel silly.
To try and get across. But...
Me feel silly. Nature good. Not know this. Now know. Nature good. It's about as clever as the movie is. GI Asshole is not a very well-rounded villain, but he is a compelling one. When he finds out they're escaping, he just runs out sans mask and shoots at them because he's a psychopath. I love that. It's one of my favorite scenes of the whole movie, and it's one of the few scenes I remembered coming into this.
To be fair, on the page, I'm not sure his character is so archetypal. I think that's a performance choice that's actually benefited and raised what's on the page. For him to just go, all right, I'll be the villain in a 90s children's cartoon then. Like, is a great choice. It really is. He might as well have a cigar.
Yeah. I also didn't like that this movie dissipates all tension the minute it ramps up. So the way a movie like this normally works when you've got a person torn between two sides is that continues to be the case throughout the ending, so they're always sort of torn. But this movie makes the very easy choice of, well, one side is clearly right, one side is clearly wrong. And the minute the side that's wrong finds out that he's doing that, they like throw him in the brig and are like, yeah, we're done with you. And then he's just like unambiguously on the Na'vi side, escapes and goes and helps them. And I just think like you break the tension the minute that it's starting to amp up. Like the minute he's starting to be forced to make a difficult choice, the movie just makes that choice free for him and easy for him. I don't agree with that as a storytelling choice. Rian Johnson recently talked about his choice in The Last Jedi to make Rey no one, and he sort of said the thing about the Darth Vader reveal in Empire Strikes Back is that the last thing, the most difficult thing Luke could hear in that moment is that his father is Darth Vader, the man he's fighting. That's the hardest thing for Luke to hear. But for Rey, someone searching for an identity that was given away as a child, the easiest thing for Rey to hear is that she's a Kenobi or a Palpatine or a whatever. And actually, the hardest thing for Rey to hear in that moment is that she's no one. That she doesn't matter.
And you know what? It's also, then the reason it's so controversial is because it's also the hardest thing for the audience to hear.
Correct. You are exactly right, Chris. Now, you look at a movie...
And I'm not arguing against it. The Last Jedi, I'm pretty sure The Last Jedi is my favourite Star Wars movie, right? So I'm well on the side of Last Jedi. Maybe not, maybe A New Hope or Empire Strike Back. I think it goes Jedi, Empire, and New Hope. But, as in Last Jedi, Empire, and New Hope. But... Maybe that goes against that argument. I agree. I think it's a great script decision. It's a great character decision. It works for me. But he is making a Star Wars film. There has been 6 films before it that have been all about everyone being someone. And, maybe it's not arguably. I'm not saying this is my argument, but I can see the argument of, well, it's not the time to do that. It's the time to do she is actually someone.
No, I disagree, because I think that's the reason Star Wars is currently creatively bankrupt is its inability to move away from anything those original movies did. Right now, we're just puttering around in those same waters that Star Wars was always in. Rian Johnson made an attempt to drag Star Wars out of the dirt, kicking and screaming, to allow it to open up the world to being about something other than Skywalkers. And idiots spat in its face, and then the studio got nervous, and then J.J. Abrams made the worst, arguably one of the worst, dumbest Star Wars movies that made Rey a Palpatine. So I know where that thought comes from. I strongly disagree with it. But anyway, bringing it back to this movie. So because I was building to a point. It's always risky to reference The Last Jedi, isn't it? Without it becoming a discussion of its own. But so with that Rian Johnson logic in mind, right? The hardest thing for Rey to hear in that moment is that she's no one, right? The most difficult thing you could put this character through is actually giving him genuine choice. Maybe we don't just unambiguously have villainous people on the human side. Maybe there are still programs operational that can make this happen. That can come to an agreement with the Na'vi. That can benefit both sides. That can do something good to bridge the gap between the two. And he's torn between humanity, who are still figuring it out, and the Na'vi genuinely, not just unambiguous evil, unambiguous good. Because the movie gets to a point when the tension is building, and then it's like, well, no, those are the bad guys. He's obviously going to choose a Na'vi, and then he just does. And once he makes that choice, there's no more tension in this entire movie, because the easiest thing for him to find out is that the people he's been working for are super evil. Oh, great, my choice is super easy. I'm not in any way torn between the Na'vi and the humans.
At no point in the movie ever is he torn. It goes back to one of my first comments, which is That's one of the biggest problems.
I'm not sure I 100% agree with that, though, because do you not think at the beginning of the movie, when they've got him actually reporting back to Stephen Lang's General Dickhead, at that point they want us to feel like he's kind of on their side?
I don't think an argument is they want us to feel like. An argument would be, do you not feel like?
Right, but is that not? Do you not think that's what they're going for writing wise at that point though? Is that he's supposed?
Of course, but I'm saying it's that
they failed to do that, but that is what the intent is, I think.
Oh yeah. No, I'm not disagreeing. I'm not disagreeing. That's the intent. I'm saying it doesn't work, in my opinion.
No, I agree with you on that. But what I'm saying is to fix that, actually have some redeeming qualities to the humans.
Completely.
Let's not make them unambiguously evil, because then we can actually have some tension of what side he's going to choose. Because it's the easiest thing for him to find out is that they're super obviously evil. We're just going to bulldoze the tree. We're going to burn everything to the ground because mustache twirling is happening. Okay, cool. Well, then I know what side I'm on. Great. Choice made. I wish the version of this movie we got was the version where we are just like, what's Jake going to do?
But part of the problem is the tension of what Jake's going to do is the carrot that is dangled for the other side in the movie is General Villain saying to him, "You can get your legs back. We will pay for it. You will have legs again in the real world." The problem is the other choice, the Na'vi world, gives him legs. Yes. And like the best legs and the best body ever for, a soldier. So there's just no choice from the beginning, because it's like, well, there's no conflict here because it's the same thing, both sides, and one is better.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, the leg thing immediately makes it kind of broken before we even get to the which side is unambiguously evil and which side is unambiguously good. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Last note I made, Chris, and I just want to ask you about this, then we'll quickly get to the trivia. Sorry, this has gone on longer than I was. I'm surprised it's gone on as long as it has. The humans just pick up and leave.
Oh, it just makes no sense. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm so confused. So they go to try and bomb the tree, right? Na'vi stop them. So they just march them out of there.
Yeah. That's what happens, yeah.
So the Na'vi, off-screen, invaded the human encampment and won?
I assume so.
Or the humans just dropped their weapons and went, "You've beat us," because of the tree thing?
Either or, we don't know.
That's real dumb.
Yeah. The look between Phoebe's brother and Jake, the fact that the other guy who's as a performance, I don't actually mind. We've not talked about him at all, but the other Avatar, the actor who's I think he was in Dodgeball. I looked him up. He's sort of historically a comedic actor. He's back for the sequels as well. The fact that he's chosen to stay, but in that scene, Jake's in his avatar and he's not. Like, what's going on there? Just a lot of it doesn't make any sense, man. But yeah, that's what we're led to believe. That either they fought them some more and won, or that the humans went, "Yeah, no, you're right. If you've got the forest on your side, we're never going to win this." Which kind of makes more sense and fits more. Unobtainium is truly unattainable, because how are we ever going to beat it when you're able to attack? You're able to engulf, have the might of every creature in this forest. But that, I think, is the explanation that fits more.
But then why do the visual of being marched off surrounded by Na'vi holding like guns and weapons and stuff?
Yeah.
Because that visual implies they were overpowered at their own base.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So you're right. Story-wise, deciding this ain't worth the money we're spending. This unobtainium is valuable, but our industrial military complex is like costing us bajillions to keep fighting these Na'vi, and we're not winning. That makes sense, and I want that to be the answer, because that makes way more sense to me, that they just go, you know what, this isn't worth the cost of this war. We're spending...
what would have been cool? A scene, sorry to interrupt, but a scene where Phoebe's brother is getting shouted down by, he's been the top of the tree the whole movie, and then it's apparent there's another, like you said earlier, there's a government, there's another top of the tree turning to Phoebe's brother going, you fucked up, this has cost way too much money, it's been a fucking disaster, you're coming back.
Right. So either give me that, don't give me they're surrounded by like a line of Na'vi as they are marched off the planet, because that makes it look like the Na'vi had another fight, which if you're going to do that, I want to see that fight. That's a big fight. The Na'vi going into their territory and taking over. So show me fucking that. Or ambiguous ending, we won the battle, but the war ain't over.
Yeah, especially if humans are coming back in the sequel, maybe a better moment. Like, the eye-opening is cool, but how much cooler would it be if we have Jake transfer, his eyes open, he's truly Na'vi now, and the final scene of the movie is him at truly Na'vi standing face to face with Phoebe's brother. I mean, I can't believe I've called it the character Phoebe's brother, but and that's how the movie ends. Those two facing each other, Na'vi and human, prepared to talk. What are the outcomes of those talks? Who knows? We'll find out in the sequel.
Yeah, I think his character is called Parker Selfridge.
Well, I'm definitely going to keep calling him Phoebe's brother then.
That's fair.
He's called.
So yeah, I don't know.
Parker Government.
It's a dumb ending. I don't like it.
It's a pretty dumb movie. Some would argue.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't even. For me, it's not even. It's not even that it's dumb. It's just it's pretending it's layered with themes and actually nothing is explored. That's my biggest criticism of this movie, and pretty much everything we've said to me falls under that category. Like, that's my biggest thing with this movie. It's frustrating that it is seen in some quarters as this sort of layered, complex masterpiece, when actually nothing is given, nothing is explored and given depth. It's a theme is not a theme if it's just simply present. You need to do something with those themes. You need to explore them in some way. And this doesn't. Again, visual spectacle in the cinema. Incredible. And a lot of those visuals still hold up, but a lot of the fight scenes look great. The creation of the world is great. But for me personally, it's not enough. And the film suffers because of that. So if you've got the opportunity to go and see this in the cinema in 3D, go. I'd recommend it. If you're looking for an action movie to put on a Sunday afternoon, I wouldn't recommend this.
No.
Well, did you say whether you give your kind of summary, and then I've got a question for you?
No, I echo that. I echo exactly that. I think the movie is passable enough that with special effects that at the time were groundbreaking and 3D, this was a cinema-going experience that was worth having. Without those special effects now, because they've aged, and without the 3D because you're watching it in a home environment, and no one was dumb enough to buy a 3D TV. Well, I'm assuming someone was, but I certainly didn't. When you strip away that stuff, the actual film is super fucking stupid. It's really, really cartoonishly dumb, and it's not worth your time. Yeah.
So, Dan, genuine. I'm not meaning this as a joke. This is a genuine question. Are you going to the cinema to see the sequel?
Yeah. Because for the reasons we've literally just said. Like,
yeah, no, I know.
I don't feel any shame in saying that. I don't feel like this is a contradiction. I don't feel like I'm in some way being a hypocrite. We've just spent 2 hours telling people exactly why this was worth seeing in a cinema, but was not worth seeing at home. So I'm not going to not see the sequel in cinemas. Because that's the only time I'm probably going to enjoy it.
I completely agree. It just makes me laugh.
Yeah.
So,
and that's the thing. And anyone thinks this. I keep hearing it from like cinema fans and film fans going, "Who's going to see this? They've waited way too long. No one cares." I'm like, you are wrong. You're so wrong. It's going to make a bunch of money. I do think the third one will flop because there won't be any time in between it. We'll have just seen one. That novelty will be gone. No one's going to give a shit. If they do the third one within a year or two of this new one, it's going to be an absolute shit show. Like, it will not make the same level of money at all.
Yeah. And weren't all like 4 sequels filmed together or something?
I think they let him film 2 or 3 together. So there are definitely a couple coming. But I don't think they let him complete it. I think there's still 2 scripts sat there. So maybe he filmed 2
right.
and there's still 2 more to film. I think they were smart enough to go, well, because these are expensive movies to make. Like this, at the time, this was the most expensive movie ever made.
I remember seeing a quote from Kate Winslet saying that she lost track of what sequel she was filming when.
Right. Yeah, they definitely filmed 2 at once, at least, if not 3. But I think he said he wanted to do 5. So if they did do 3, then there's 1 more to film. If they did do 2, then there's 2 more to film. But yeah, yes, for sure.
Okay, cool. Right. Well, let's trim it up.
I'm gonna give you some trivia. So, alternate casting choices. Matt Damon and Jake Gyllenhaal were the studio's original choices to play Jake Sully, but Cameron decided he wanted to cast a relatively unknown actor in Sam Worthington in the role instead. At the time of auditioning, Sam Worthington was actually just living in his car. According to Sam Worthington, he was invited to the casting via a phone call. The person who called told him nothing about the script, nor did they mention the director's name, and Worthington was disappointed at first, thinking that meant it was just going to be some tiny audition and a complete waste of time. In the end, it was basically the start of a career. Like, it was, it was a big shift for him. So yeah.
What's funny about that is, let me just double check this, because I read that Matt Damon was considered on the Wikipedia.
Yes.
But interestingly, it says on there, Cameron offered the role to Matt Damon with a 10% stake in the film's profits, but Damon turned the film down due to his commitment in the Bourne film series. So it's a slightly different take on that.
Do I have
it
that
links
also?
to an article, Matt Damon talks turning down Avatar. I was offered a little movie called Avatar. James Cameron offered me 10% of it. I will go down in history. You will never meet an actor who turned down more money.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way it's phrased here is Matt Damon and Jake Gyllenhaal were the studio's first choices to play Jake Sully, but James Cameron decided to cast relatively unknown Sam Worthington. Maybe he decided to cast Sam Worthington after Matt Damon turned it down.
Yeah. Yeah,
because I guess the studio's first choice, you probably, like, when they're ponying up 300 million to make your movie, I guess they've got some sway.
Let's just look at that as well, though. Hold on. So, bear with. Percentage calculator. Oh, I don't even know. How many...
It was 2.8 billion it made.
No, I know that, but how many noughts are in a billion? 9?
Well, wait, because you could just do it as you could just do it as, you don't have to do the noughts because you can just do it as, yeah. So it would have been 280 million.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, 284 million. I think is what I've got here as well. Yeah,
so
284 million.
So Matt Damon lost out on $250 million. Good work, buddy.
That is an insane amount of money.
Yeah. So Sam Worthington is actually Australian and said in an interview that it was easier for him to master the Na'vi language than do an American accent. Which I thought was quite funny.
Fair enough.
Yeah. The Na'vi language was created entirely from scratch by a linguist, Dr. Paul R. Fromer. James Cameron hired him to construct a language that would be easy for actors to pronounce, but would not resemble any human accents. Fromer created about 1,000 words. So there you
go. Nice.
Cameron originally wanted the film to be released, or to make the film in the 90s and have it released in 99. At the time, special effects The special effects he wanted would have had the budget be just incredible, like astronomical, like uncalculable almost. So no studio would make it, and the film got shelved. The movie took 4 years to make once they did start doing it, but the reason they started filming was that James Cameron was convinced CGI had finally reached where they needed to. This is what's funny about this. I think these two things contradict each other, right? So here they're saying James Cameron wanted to have the film released in 1999, but at the time, special effects he wanted had the budget too high, basically, to make it look what he wanted to. So he waited, right? But then, a little bit of rewriting history. It sounds like he's said in an interview since that basically he was convinced CGI had gotten to where it needed to be for him to do the movie when he saw Gollum in Two Towers in 2002. And that's when he started pushing to get Avatar actually made, 2002. Which, if you say it took 4 years to make, means he started production in 2005. So that kind of tracks.
Yeah, that does track.
But it sounds like he did try to get it made before then, and everyone said it was too expensive. So let's not pretend like you were like, oh, I just waited. I was very wise. I waited for the right moment to strike.
It's classic, yeah. And I deliberately cast an unknown. Didn't Matt Damon turn it down? Shush.
I deliberately cast an unknown. Yeah, I'm starting to sense a pattern here. Most of the animal noises heard in the movie are actually recycled dinosaur noises from Jurassic Park. Notably the T-Rex and the raptors.
That's great, Trev.
Yeah, I like that. I enjoy that. Director James Cameron, known for being tough on set, allegedly kept a small nail gun on set, and if anyone's cell phone had the misfortune of ringing, he would nail it to the wall above the exit sign.
But that's going to make it... Would he turn it off first? Because that's going to make it more difficult to turn it off if it rings again, isn't it?
Well, I assume nailing a phone to the wall would probably break the phone.
Yeah, good point. Good point, Dan.
Yeah, I would assume so. Big nail through the middle of a phone? Probably not working anymore.
Yeah, had not thought that through. Great point.
But yeah, isn't that mad?
Yeah, oh yeah, still mental. Like
that's insane. So apparently Cameron took the actors to Hawaii to prepare for the movie. They spent their days trekking through the forests and jungles in order to get a better sense of what it would be like to live and move around in the jungles of Pandora. Since there would not be any actual jungle sets to aid and guide the actors and crew, Saldana dressed up as a warrior during these journeys, complete with alien tail, symbolic of the one her character has in the movie. These hikes were only done during the daytime, however, and the cast and crew spent their nights at the Four Seasons Hotel. Sort of. I like that the person who wrote that trivia was real sassy at the end there and added that like a little extra fact.
Yeah. sort of undermines the first bit, doesn't it? The second bit.
I think so. The book that Grace picks up in the abandoned school is The Lorax, which is a Dr. Seuss book. And if anyone does not know, The Lorax is a book that basically echoes the plot of this movie. It's about a forest full of beautiful trees and mythical creatures that are destroyed by man's lust for the forever growing industry. I would recommend reading that book over watching this movie. It's shorter and it has the same message, dealt with in the same level of depth. Actually, you know what? I think it's better. I think it has more depth.
You know why I think it's better? Because it's shorter.
Yeah. That's fair. So, to appease 20th Century Fox's growing fears about this movie, as production overruns and cost delays were becoming a common trait of Cameron's, he'd actually done the same thing with Titanic, gone well over budget and well over production time. He promised them that if Avatar flopped, he would forgo his director's fee.
Wow.
Bold move.
That's a bold move. You can't, Cameron's many things and said some things, and but you can't fault that in a way, can you?
No, put his money where his mouth is, for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the most expensive movies ever made at the time, with an estimated budget of $280 million in US dollars. I don't believe that is still the most expensive movie ever made. I think that may have now been passed with Endgame. But
the movie was made for only $40 million more than Matt Damon would have made from it.
Right? Yeah. so true. He would have had the movie's budget basically back. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Amazing.
Yeah. During the course of the Harry Potter movies, Daniel Radcliffe went through 160 pairs of glasses. That's interesting, isn't it?
Cool. Nice.
When the movie was while the movie is often described as an anti-war movie by critics and fans, James Cameron repeatedly said in interviews that the film was not inspired by or commenting on any specific conflicts or any specific nation's overall foreign or defense policies. I mean, I believe that because the movie is dumb as a fucking bag of bricks, so I don't think it would have had the.
It's a very generic sort of, and again, worthy of I'm all up for as many things making this point as possible, but it's a very generic environmental message. Again, I think that's very worthy, but that's what it is. It's not a war thing; it's an environmental thing.
Exactly, and that's exactly what Cameron said. He said that the film did have a very strong pro-environmentalist message. That was on purpose, as he put it, because I'm a tree hugger. So there you go. It was the highest grossing movie ever for 10 whole years, with $2.78 billion. It was then beaten by Endgame, pipped by Endgame, with $2.79 billion. But then following a sneaky little re-release in China, Avatar took the crown back again in 2021 when it hit 2.8.
And fair play, because when it took it back over, I believe the Russos and Disney or Marvel, like there was an acknowledgement of them taking it back over and a well done. Like there's that, it's become a thing for the biggest movie to say congrats to the next biggest movie and all that stuff. Right. But it was proper cheeky because it didn't even come that long after, did it? It basically was just like almost first opportunity. Oh yeah, it's out again here. Like, is it? Okay.
And that gap will only extend now because we're getting a re-release of Avatar like this month. So, yeah, there it is. Whatever. It's a shame because I would have liked a movie that had a bit more thought put into it, being the highest grossing, but whatever. This is a nice little detail. In the final battle sequence, Neytiri has a white handprint on her chest as part of her war paint. But if you look, you'll notice it only has 5 fingers, indicating that it was Jake's hand. The Avatar hands have 5 fingers, while true Na'vi only have 4. So yeah, it most likely came from Jake.
Yeah, nice.
I also like that detail as well, that they've adjusted the avatars to have the right number of fingers for a human so that you're not physically confused, because obviously your brain is probably wired to understand and interact with 5 fingers. So if they made the Na'vi bodies exactly with the 4 fingers, that might have been difficult to physically operate for a person.
Yeah.
That's a neat little detail. I don't mind that. So, It looks like, based on the dates on Jake's video logs...
And actually, just also, give the movie credit for that. At no point is the plot of this movie them pretending to really be Na'vi, and that's the thing that gets them in trouble, and that's what the fallout... Because a worse version of this movie is that, for sure.
100%. 100%. So, according to Jake's video logs, the entire movie takes place over 96 days. The first log is dated 19th of May, 2154, and his last recording that we see is 24th of August, 2154, which is apparently Jake's birthday. The final battle takes place August 2154, which is 200 years from the date of James Cameron's birth. I suspect a coincidence.
Yeah.
Zoe Saldana's Star Trek co-star Chris Pine and Guardians co-star Chris Pratt both auditioned for Jake Sully. Chris Pine has apparently said that it was the worst audition he ever did.
I can't... That's like Parks and Rec era Chris Pratt as well, isn't it?
Yes,
That's
would be, yeah.
that's not like action. Like I'm not trying to body shame, but you do. People talk about two distinct Chris Pratts: comedy Chris Pratt and action hero Chris Pratt. And I kind of would have been interested in seeing comedy Chris Pratt do this role.
Yeah. It certainly would have been interesting. Yeah. I wouldn't rule out the possibility though that he would have gotten into shape for it, the same way he did when he got given the role of Star-Lord. So I don't think we'd have ever seen the comedy Chris Pratt version of this movie, even if he'd been cast. But yeah, I certainly would be interested in seeing a movie like that. But yeah, interesting. Apparently James Cameron has a little cameo in the movie. His voice can be heard on the radio shortly after the gunship, the Dragon gunship appears on screen. He en route to attack the Na'vi home tree. So he's just like one of the voices on a radio somewhere. Fun. There you go. That's the truth.
Cool.
No cars exist because there's no cars in the movie. There are some. There are some. I did look into just in case to see if any of the various military vehicles resembled, the military vehicles we have now. But sadly, they're all completely unique designs. They don't really seem based on anything. Apparently, a couple of the cars have some mild Jeep inspiration, but it's extremely subtle. It's not really. Nothing in this movie really resembles a real-world vehicle, significantly enough to be referenced.
Fair play again, then, to commitment to world building.
Sure, yeah. Oh, again, production design. Once again, the compliment is the production design. I don't know what to tell people. It's the same thing that's good the whole way through, which is the Pandora is very well realized visually. The creatures look cool. All that stuff. Yeah, thumbs up. Good work.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So there we go. We've made our feelings quite clear. If you want to go see it at the cinema on the big screen, go ahead. Otherwise,
I would recommend
that. Otherwise, it's not got the depth of many other great.
And actually,
heroes.
I'm not even actually sure I'd recommend going to see this one in a cinema now because. Well, I suppose we don't know yet because we haven't seen what updates it has, because they have said they've touched up the special effects and stuff, so maybe this is not true. But this movie, exactly as it was, played again in 3D now, I don't think has the same impact as it did at the time. The new movie, on the other hand, obviously with more modern stuff, will probably at least have some of that feel.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. So, speaking of depth, Dan... Now, we know where we're going next. We've talked about it plenty of times. I won't do a big pretend thing. We are now in December, people, and we are launching headfirst into the Santa Claus trilogy.
What?
This is brand new information. starting with my choice, the Santa Claus. There you go.
What Chris doesn't know is next week when the expectation is that I'm going to choose Santa Claus 2, now he needs a wife for some reason. I'm probably just going to choose something different to wind him up.
We do this joke every time we do a trilogy. It never happens. But you are free to do that, obviously. But it will, I think, promising this trilogy for as long as we have, and then you choosing Home Alone might might disturb that slightly.
No, I'm happy. I'm happy to do it. We make the joke, but yeah, the reality is like I am so curious because my memory is that the first one is pretty good and the sequels are both awful. So I am progressively awful, though I will say. I think my memory is that the second one is like pretty bad, but not like the worst thing in the world. But the third one is just a shit show. That's my memory of it. So I'm kind of excited to find out if that's true or if I'm gonna like. A little bit older, a little bit wiser, just take it as it is. Disappointment from young Dan. Not the same as. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like older Dan might be like a bit more tolerant of that stuff. So I'm curious to see how it turns out. Do you know what I mean? Like, where I might just go, oh, it's like dumb fun. He fights Jack Frost or whatever. I might not be as against it, as I was once upon a time. So we'll see. I'm very curious.
We shall see. We shall see.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, where can the people find us in the meantime, Dan?
Well, if you've got any thoughts of your own on Avatar, and I'd be amazed if you did, because I finished the movie thinking, God, I don't even know what we're going to say on the podcast. I'm glad we found stuff to talk about, but fuck me, there's nothing to it. So, but if you have thoughts, feel free to tell us those thoughts. I'd be very curious. You can get us in a few different places. Mail at Nothing But Static if you've got a big old diatribe you want to get off your chest. Absolutely, that's the place to do it. You can get us on YouTube as well. If you head over to the YouTube channel, there's a video version. I have video version in quote marks because there's no video of us talking. It's just a related image. But it's you can go on that version of it and leave a comment down below. That's another way to sort of get your thoughts across. The other thing you can do, of course, is get us on Twitter. I'm at Dan Doolan. Chris is at C Billingham. So you can message us there. We also have a Nothing But Static one, not as used as frequently, but it is there. It's at Nothing But Static without the G. You can also, of course, get next week's episode. Find out what we thought of the Santa Claus right now. Did you know that, Chris? Right now, 1 week early. Did you know about this?
I did. Yeah,
Oh.
it's very exciting, Dan. How can I do that?
Well, you'd go over to patreon.com/nothingbutstatic, and for as little as $1 a month, sign up to that service, and then you get that. But also, potentially, some bonus podcasts coming soon.
This is all
Special,
very exciting.
exclusive to the Patreon content. Not promising that content will be any good, but I promise it probably coming.
But it is exclusive.
It is exclusive. But also, episodes of this podcast, Rewind Reviews, go up there a week early. But also, when we finish this current series of Rewind Reviews in sort of January, we'll be then putting up episodes of our podcast analysing Avatar a week early over there instead, because that's what we kind of, in the off-season for Rewind Reviews, we kind of replace it with that. So, check that out. If you're interested, of course, if you'd like to support us in ways that are not financial, you can do it by telling a friend. You've probably got a friend who likes Avatar. 2.8 billion is a lot of money. Someone out there likes this fucking movie, so find that person, tell them we ragged on it for 2 hours and see how they feel. Feel free to tell a friend about the podcast if you've got someone who's also super nerdy and into movies and TV shows and stuff, and we can all be friends together. The other thing you can do is obviously keep listening. We appreciate that. Clap, clap, clap. Well done. Thank you. If you want to interact in a more direct way and help us out, you can all go in app. It's just in app. You just do it on the app that you've got. You go over there and you say, hey, Spotify, I liked this podcast, and you give it a thumbs up or a like or a review of any kind on whatever the app you use is. And when you do that, it tells that service that you liked the podcast, and then the service goes, maybe we should recommend this to other people so we can insipidly promote it to other people and keep them using our service for even longer, because world domination is what we're after here at Spotify.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the memo, isn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you give us a like or a thumbs up or a review on any podcast app that you use. It will definitely take that into its algorithm, TM, and suggest it to other people, and that's nice for us.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. That's all the ways you can find us. Thank you very much for listening. Really appreciate it. We are looking forward to delving into the Santa Claus, which we will do next week. In the meantime, my name's Chris Billingham.
I'm Dan Doolan. Oh, I ruined it. I'm sorry. My name's Dan Doolan. Sorry, Chris. I let you down.
We'll go again. I'll do it with exactly the same panache. Thank you very much for listening. We're just about to dive into the Santa Claus. But in the meantime, my name's Chris Billingham.
My name's Dan Doolan.
And this review has been Rewound.
I feel bad I let you down there, buddy. You said my name. I went for
didn't.
I've been.
You didn't. Part of the problem, Dan, and I'm fully aware of this, is that you never know which way I'm going to go 1 week to the other. Whether I'm going to say my name is. So don't you worry about me letting you down. I apologise for switching it almost every week.
No, at this point I know. I should be listening and paying attention and be ready for that. There's only really two options. I should be ready for both. That's on me at this point. I think the first time you switched it up on me, that's on you a little. But subsequent times, Chris, that's on me.
I see what you're saying, but I still think it's mainly my fault.
I should know. I'm well aware you're going to do it one way or the other. As soon as you're wrapping up, I should be going, which is it? Is it my name? Is it I've been? Is it I've been? It's I've been. It's I've been. I've been Dan Doolan. That's what should be happening. But, my mind slipped for a second. Didn't catch up quick enough. I said the wrong one.
You're all excited for the Santa Claus.
I am really excited for the Santa Claus.
Yeah, me too. And we are, because obviously we watch these movies every year. And, Jess is concerned because we are right on the cusp of watching it early enough at the point that we're recording to justify rewatching them again in December. Something that Jess isn't that keen on doing.
Amazing. Well, there you go. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and be gone. Be free.
Bye.
Goodbye.